All right, welcome back into the podcast. Excited to talk to this guy. I have known this man a long time. In fact, I was thinking about how to put this in perspective. I've known this man since a few months after the Chicago Bears were last in a Super Bowl. That's how long we've known each other. He is Nick Kostos from the You Better You Bet podcast and show. You get that on Odyssey. You get that wherever you get your podcasts. He is everywhere, and he's a member of the national media that has a lot of opinions. And I want to get some national media some ideas from the national media on just how crappy they think this Chicago Bears team is. And he joins me now. Nick, Bill Zimmerman, how you doing?
Bill, Rex is our quarterback. Good to be with you.
Well, Rex probably wouldn't be doing any worse than Justin Fields. We'll get to Fields here in a minute, but just kind of the overall vibe of this team has been going downhill since a little before week one. And this Kansas City Chiefs game, a lot of fans want to say, well, this is rock bottom because it was that pathetic of a performance. But with this Bears team, I don't think they've hit rock bottom yet. Where were you going into this game? Like, a lot of people are like, oh, you can't bet the Chiefs minus 13. I would have hammered the Chiefs minus 13. That to me was an obvious play.
Yeah, I bet the Chiefs 12.5. I thought that was, no bets obvious. I had a really good week 3. Also, I bet the Broncos and the Commanders, like final score against 107-20 or whatever. So yeah, like not just because you place a bet, you think it's going to win doesn't mean it's going to. But yeah, that one I felt pretty good about. I like your usage of the phrase rock bottom there. And on yesterday, on Monday's edition of You Better You Bet, we were talking about the Broncos Bears game coming up this week, which is, you've heard of the Super Bowl. This would be the toilet bowl. And like, are both teams right now at rock bottom? Like, is this rock bottom for both teams? And I said for the Broncos, like, I actually think this is rock bottom for Denver. If Sean Payton is even, like, I said 51% yesterday, I'll actually say like 49%. If he's 49% of the coach that we think he is, then this will be rock bottom for the Broncos. And like, I'm not saying I didn't think they were going to be a playoff team anyway, but it's not going to be that bad the rest of the year. Or he might get fired or resign after year one. I don't think that's going to be what it is. But for the Bears, I actually don't even think they've like scraped the surface of what rock bottom could be yet. I think it's like Earth's core is where the Bears could possibly be going all the way down. And it's not just on field. I think you're starting to get clues about what's happening off the field. Also, we can talk about that. Like I tossed out a theory yesterday on the show. I think that things are in line for the Bears to have like the number 1 pick in the draft again this year.
Oh, I think that's absolutely where this is headed. And you want to talk about the Broncos a little bit. I think Vegas always knows, right? We always make those jokes. Vegas knows.
Do they? I don't think so.
Well, either way.
Bettors know. Vegas doesn't know.
All right. Well, regardless, Vegas, and I don't think anyone's disagreeing, a team that just put up 70 points is a 3-point road favorite. Again, or allowed. I think I said put up. Allowed 70 points is a 3-point road favorite against the Chicago Bears. That's where this Bears team is. It's a level, Nick, where there's bad football teams, right? There's there's bad football teams that lose games, like the Minnesota Vikings right now. The Minnesota Vikings are a bad football team. The Chicago Bears are an unprofessional football team. That's how bad they are.
I agree completely. And I was I bet Denver 2.5 on Sunday night. I couldn't believe that line when I saw it. And you're right. Like it's kind of, I don't know if it's like a once in a lifetime betting event. Like that's probably like an exaggeration, but you're right. Team allows 70 points. Then they get like hammered on Sunday night. It's not just by me. Other people are betting it also. And now they're like, it's like in between 3 and 3.5. That might close 3.5. And I don't know what number I would need to bet Chicago. So I already bet the Broncos. I would never bet the Bears in this game. Never.
Well, the way the Bears are playing right now, and hopefully things get somewhat more organized and professional for this team, it's going to be hard-pressed no matter how big those numbers get against better football teams. It's going to be hard-pressed for me to see any games throughout the year that it's worth taking the Bears on the plus points. Because I can't see them being favored against anyone moving forward unless they get better.
Yeah, well, no. I mean, they're more than a 3-point home underdog against the 0-3, bro. Yeah, they're not, as of right now, they're definitely not going to be favored in any games. I would say, I do a lot of media and I get asked like a lot of catch-all questions, which I understand where like the question's coming from. Like, can we never bet the Bears the rest of the season? And it's like, well, let's focus on this week. Like, no, I wouldn't bet them this week. But like there will reach a point likely where the number will be so big that Chicago will actually be the right side in the game with the points. Especially if, and like, I think Getsy stinks, and like, I think they're all going to get fired, and we can talk about that if you want, Bill. They did call some more design runs for Fields. They ran into a buzzsaw in Kansas City, like an offense that was ready to explode. So, I mean, like, the backdoor potential exists in these games. If Fields is actually going to be running the ball for as long as he's the starting quarterback, I don't know if he's going to be the starting quarterback of this team come Thanksgiving, but that's, again, a conversation maybe we can have here. But at some point, they will become valuable. It hasn't happened for me yet. I have bet against them in the first 3 weeks, and I have bet against them in week 4.
Yeah, I heard a line from Jason Goff that I liked is the fact that Travis Kelce invited Taylor Swift to this game. And I don't care too much about the Swifties and all the side, hoopla about that. But I love the way he put it. He basically said, he goes, you're inviting your girl to a game. He goes, this is homecoming. Like, this is, you pick the opponent where you're just like, I am going to look so good in front of her. And he picked the Bears. That's where this franchise is. And you're talking about kind of off the field. And I think that's honestly, besides Justin Fields, that's where things are getting more interesting at this point, because everything is such a dumpster fire. I've always made a big deal about it. Mark Trestman is the only coach in Chicago Bears history that was fired with 2 years left on his deal. The Bears are, inherently a cheap family, the McCaskies. They don't tend to do this. Matt Eberflus, no one knows the parameters of this contract. It's a 5-year contract.
He's going to get fired.
Because that's the basic, premise of coaching contracts now is 5 years. There's no way, like, he should be fired now. They're not going to do it in season.
They're going to fire him. He's going to get fired.
They are going to have to eat a tremendous amount of money. And then it's going to come down to, is Ryan Poles worth firing as well? Because you should always give a GM 3 years, in my opinion, to kind of build the team in their eyes. But football, he's in charge of football operations, and everything is such a mess. I don't know if he's going to be able, when it's all said and done this year, to, shower the stench of this season off and keep his job. Even though Fields wasn't his guy and Matt Eberflus he had a small pool of coaches to pick from. There's a lot of things that Ryan Poles could say to keep his job, but it would make a lot of sense if they have the number 1 pick and Kevin Warren now in place as the president, to me, to just probably clean house everywhere. Let Kevin Warren hire people and start totally new.
Yeah, I actually, and here's the hot take that I'll give you right now. I actually think there's reason for Bears fans to be optimistic in the future. I'm being serious, and I'm a Giants fan, and I say on my show, and I say on like whenever I do media in the local area, I live in New York. I'm such a good Giants fan that I know when it's time to root against my team. Because I think good things will happen if they lose. So when Dave Gettleman and Joe Judge were limping towards the end of their era, it was they need to get embarrassed in every game. Gettleman can't come back and Judge can't come back. This is a disaster. And thankfully it got so bad, and John Mara was so embarrassed that Gettleman was sent off into retirement with his watch, and Joe Judge got fired, and here come Dable and Shane, professionals, to run the organization. So I think the optimism that Bears fans should have is that it's so embarrassing right now that I actually think Kevin Warren is going to be forced to clean house. So here's what I think is going to happen. And I think we're starting to get clues as to what's going to happen. Jay Glazer says on Fox on Sunday morning during the pregame show that the Bears are not sold or not whatever the term was, not committed to Justin Fields as the long-term answer at quarterback. That's planted with him purposefully, right? That's not float. Glazer's not getting that secondhand. Someone in the Bears organization has told him that, right? And so then you ask yourself, okay, why is this information being floated out there? My best guess is that this is Poles trying to scapegoat the quarterback that he didn't draft, right? Which is a Nagy and Pace, save our asses, trade a first-round pick next year because we're not going to be here anyway if it goes poorly, right? To draft Justin Fields to try and reset our clocks, right? Now I think this is Poles trying to reset his. You can easily sell, I didn't draft this quarterback. This quarterback's the absolute worst, right? So they're already laying the groundwork for Fields to be out next year. That's already started. And by the way, he's bad. Everyone wants to defend Justin Fields, right? And say, oh, well, the organization hasn't given him a chance to succeed. Two things can be true. The organization can be bad, and Fields can also be miserable. He's terrible. He's awful. Not he's better than Zach Wilson, but the Zach Wilson bar is as low as it can possibly be. Fields is the next step up from Zach Wilson. He's terrible. So I think they're already planting the seeds for Fields to be out. So Fields is going to be out. then it's going to be what? Nathan Peterman or Tyson Bagent? Maybe Tyson Bagent. They should start Bagent the rest of the year and at least see what they've got. At least like the last couple games of the year. We know Peterman's absolutely brutal, right? So I think this season's going to be a train wreck in terms of wins and losses. You take Fields out of the lineup, here's Peterman. You lose every game Peterman starts. Maybe Bagent's halfway decent. You win a couple games down the stretch, but more likely you've got the 1, 2, or 3 pick in the draft. Okay, now Fields is out. Now Poles fires Eberflus and Getsy and the entire coaching staff. You bring in a new coaching staff. You got 2 likely top 10 picks. You draft your new quarterback. Maybe you make the right head coach hire, get an offensive-minded head coach, and maybe you start cooking with gas a little bit in Chicago. So that's where I think this is headed. I actually think you're a Bears fan. You need to root for absolute embarrassment. You should be rooting against them this week against the Denver Broncos. That actually makes you a better fan.
Yeah, and let's talk about Fields for a minute, because obviously he's always the elephant in the room. He's always the guy that needs to be talked about. And the bottom line here is, and this has basically been my premise the last couple of weeks before the Chiefs game, is, we lived through this Mitch Trubisky argument of, oh, well, Nagy's failing him. Oh, the offensive line isn't good enough. Oh, who's he throwing to? Like every excuse you can get. Like everyone wanted everything to be absolutely perfect for Mitch Trubisky to, succeed in a vacuum. And that means you're not the guy. That means you're a game manager. And for Justin Fields, I was getting at the point where, oh, well, Luke Getsy's failing him. Oh, the offensive line. I'm like, at this point, Ryan Poles went out, got you DJ Moore.
He loses every game. He literally loses every single game that he starts. Like enough. Like,
well, and that's what I'm saying. And there's other outside elements to it. I mean, literally, Matt Eberflus is a defensive head coach. He's given up 25 or more points in 13 straight games. Like it makes it difficult to win a football game.
Can he win one game? Can you win? I'm being serious. Can you win? They had the number 1 pick in the draft last year. They might have the number 1 pick in the draft again. Can you win one game?
And somehow he beat Bill Belichick, which is just, remarkable. But that's the thing. And that's the bottom line for me for Justin Fields is not everything can be perfect. You need, there are plays that he is just leaving on the field with wide open receivers. And it'd be, oh, well, DJ Moore dropped the ball. It happens. Nothing is perfect. But Justin Fields is not overcoming anything at this point. He's not seeing the field. And at this point, even if he starts turning it around, that's almost a problem, because all it's going to do, if he starts giving you glimmers of hope, is leave you with more questions at the end of the year.
Yeah, like I said, like Bears fans, like you have to be rooting for this to be a disaster. Like you want Fields to be bad. You want everything to be bad. You want them to let's allow 70 points on Sunday to Denver. Like make this as bad as possible and force this organization to do something. Because you're right. Fields plays well. And then it's like you want him back next year? Like really? Like he might be a nice guy. It's not to say he's not a good human being. Maybe he could resuscitate his career elsewhere. Maybe he's a good high upside backup quarterback. I don't think the guy's a starting quarterback in the NFL. And that does not absolve Poles and Eberflus and Getsy and the organization. They're bad too. But so is Fields. Like they're all bad.
Well, let me ask you this, because it seems pretty obvious at this point that Fields will be on his way out at the end of the year and the Bears will have a high pick. How high are you on Caleb Williams and Drake May? Are you big fans of what they potentially will be at the NFL level?
I won't I'm not like a hashtag film bro. I'm not grinding the all 22, but from what I've seen, Caleb Williams is pretty awesome, right? I mean, just like some of the throws that this dude makes.
I think he has a chance to be generational. Yeah, I really do.
I mean, I'm not quarterback guru, watching all these games and grinding the film, but I think Caleb Williams is awesome. I honestly I think Deion's kid is awesome, and maybe he comes back next year, but Shedeur Sanders is going to be a first-round pick for sure. May, I'm not going to lie, I have not seen a ton of North Carolina, but people appear to like Drake May. Caleb Williams is the no doubt top overall pick in the draft. Bears get the number 1 overall pick. That's Caleb Williams with a bullet, and Bears fans should be on their hands and knees praying that happens.
Now, let me ask you about the Carolina Panthers, because obviously that is a team that the Chicago Bears own that pick as well. And, fortunately enough for a dumpster fire that this is, the Panthers are 0-3 as well, setting this up to potentially the Bears having maybe 2 of the top 3 picks, maybe the top 2 picks. You said 2 of the top 10. That seems like a lock at this point, but potentially 2 of the top 5. How bad are the Panthers? Is this a team that could, start winning games later, you think, put some things together, win 6-7 games? Or is this a team that's also headed for 3 or 4 wins?
Yeah, well, the defense is bad. I mean, and they scored 27 on Sunday against Seattle, but they allowed 37. The defense has not been as good as I think people expected it might. Down a couple players, like losing Shaq Thompson really hurts, obviously. So I don't think the defense is great, but the offense showed some signs of life on Sunday with Andy Dalton. They kind of like marched up and down the field on Seattle's defense. So just like for this week's game against Minnesota, I think if you are a Bears fan, I think you have to hope that Bryce Young's back in the lineup for this game.
Dalton's definitely better than Young.
Right now he is, but you also run the risk, right? I mean, Bryce Young was great at Alabama. Like, he was awesome. No qualms with him being the first overall pick in the draft. It's definitely possible that with a week off after watching Dalton and I think they need Mingo to play because I actually think like he's pretty important to that offense. It's possible that Young comes back and he just like looks like Dalton did last week, and the week off did him a lot of good, and he was able to see things on film, whatever. If Dalton plays, I think they can definitely beat the Vikings. I will definitely bet them to cover the spread either way, whether it's Young or Dalton at the number that it's at right now. I think Sunday's game makes you a little concerned if you're a Bears fan. The Panthers are not going to the playoffs. They're not going to have a winning record. But I think that game showed you that if the offense can be frisky, I don't know if this is going to be like a 3-14 type team. Maybe they win like 5 or 6 games, still get you in the top 10, but maybe they're good enough to not pick in the top 5 now. We'll see.
All right. Yeah, that's a wait and see. Let me ask you before I let you go a little bit on the NFC North. Start with the Packers. Obviously, that's how the Bears got off on the wrong foot, was Jordan Love lighting up the sky for 3 touchdowns against Chicago. But to me, while Love is definitely outperforming what I expected him to do, he's still leaving a lot on the field. To me, watching this Packers offense, in my eyes, it's more of always never knew exactly how good Matt LaFleur was when he had Aaron Rodgers. He was obviously good. But at this point, if anyone's watched the Packers, you know that Matt LaFleur is great at what he does.
Yeah, he's an awesome coach. And okay, here's the difference between Love and Fields. Jordan Love has been playing without his best 2 skill position players the last 2 weeks, without key offensive linemen. Should have beaten Atlanta, lost on an insane comeback by the Falcons, and then came back from 17-0 down against the good Saints defense. That's the difference. And I understand LaFleur is a good coach and Eberflus isn't, but at some point, the guy on the field, that's running the show has got to go and win you a football game. So yeah, I kind of still don't think we know how good Jordan Love is. We haven't seen him play with the full complement of Christian Watson hasn't played yet this year.
Right.
Watson has it's in his range of outcomes to be a top 5 receiver in the league. Christian Watson, could be awesome. We haven't seen him play. Aaron Jones has only played 1 game so far this season. So yeah, I have bets on the Packers to win the division, bets on the Packers to make the playoffs. I bet LaFleur to win Coach of the Year. This shapes up as a pretty big game for me on Thursday night against the Detroit Lions. And as we do this right now, and we're taping this on Tuesday morning, so a lot has to be figured out with this Green Bay injury report. That'll dictate kind of the movement in the betting market for that game and kind of how I feel about the game on Thursday night. But yeah, great start to the season so far for the Packers.
And just wrap up, give me your final thoughts on Detroit and Minnesota. I don't think anyone thinks Minnesota is this, but everyone knew they were going to regress. You couldn't have that kind of a fortunate season where you have that kind of record on 1-score games back-to-back years. So I think everyone expected regression. I don't think everyone expected 0-3. And I think Detroit is pretty much, for the most part, what people expected. It's a good football team. They're going to be right there to potentially win the division and obviously be a playoff team. Kind of where are you with those 2 teams as we wrap up the talk on the North?
I'll start with Detroit. I think the Lions it's a huge game on Thursday night. If they win this game, they have set themselves up in a position to kind of tread water for the next couple weeks. They have a lot of key players that are out right now. So, 40% of the offensive line is out right now. David Montgomery is probably going to be out for this game on Thursday, and they need him. It's not even that he's great. This isn't even a David Montgomery thing. He's better than Craig Reynolds and Bam Knight, and they kind of need the thunder and lightning like him to go along with Jahmyr Gibbs. And the other piece about Detroit, Josh Reynolds is a decent number 2 receiver. He's okay. This offense desperately needs Jamison Williams back from the 6-game gambling suspension. And when you get Jamison Williams back, now it's St. Brown, Jamison Williams, and the stud rookie Sam Laporta, who's like setting records right now for rookie tight ends at the beginning of their career. So I think if the Lions can get this win on Thursday, they are setting themselves up in a position where they will actually start to peak as a team in the second half of the year. And I actually think the Lions are the answer to the question of if a team penetrates like the top 3 NFC bubble of San Francisco, Philadelphia, and Dallas, like who would it be? I think like actually like the Green Bay might be the answer also, depending on Jordan Love's ceiling, but I think the Lions are most likely the answer to that question. And Minnesota, I actually think this is a team that Bears fans should be watching pretty intently. If the wheels start to come off for Minnesota, so this is like a really, I guess like Bears fans have to root for the Vikings on Sunday just to get Carolina loss. But Minnesota loses and goes to 0-4. Kirk Cousins is only under contract through this year. So like the Vikings did not extend his deal. Like they are setting this up to like organizationally reset after this year with the GM and the head coach, Kevin O'Connell, right? They go to 0-4. Like, season's done. Season's over already right now at 0-3. I think there's a really realistic chance that Kirk Cousins is the quarterback of the Jets, like at some point in the next couple of weeks. And if you're the Vikings, you get nothing out of keeping Kirk Cousins this year and going like 7-10 or 6-11. They should actually try and intentionally bottom out. And I think that there's a realistic chance that that happens. And then I think the Vikings actually become like the main threat to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft to try and get Caleb Williams. I think it's very much in the range of outcomes that happens.
Even without Kirk Cousins, I can't see this Bears team beating the Vikings, though. That's the problem. The Vikings have a better roster.
But like in all seriousness, like I'm being serious. Like,
I understand.
Like do they?
Do they? Well, the way the Bears have looked and the way the Bears have been coached.
Like, look, the Vikings have like Jefferson is the best player on either team. The Vikings have a couple good offensive linemen. Addison has the potential to be good. Like Hawkinson's good. But then, okay, great. Now here's Nate Sudfeld or like Jaron Hall at quarterback with these guys. Okay. Yeah. And the defense is dreadful. Now look, like the Bears are the worst team. I'm just saying that, like, don't discount the Vikings to potentially like actually try and lose to get the number 1 pick if things keep going off the rails.
Bears Vikings in just a couple weeks. That'll be a hot game for the number 1 pick. There he is. Again, it's the You Better You Bet podcast and show. You get it on the BetQL Network, Odyssey, wherever you get your podcast. Nick Kostos at the Kostos on Twitter. If you don't follow him already, make sure you do. Plenty of good content and entertainment out of that account. Nick, thanks so much. Hope all is well, and we'll talk to you again soon.
I appreciate it, buddy. Thanks for having me.